Hey guys, welcome back. It's Mrs. Peterson, that lady who teaches art, and today we're going to read Yayoi Kusama Covered Everything in Dots and Wasn't Sorry by Fausto Gilberti. My name is Yayoi. I'm an artist and I would like to tell you my story. I was born in Matsumoto, a historic city in Japan, with a beautiful castle. I have always loved drawing, more than anything else in the world. When I was a little girl, I carried a sketchbook with me wherever I went. I drew everything I saw. I would sit in the meadows, between the flowers and the plants, and see things around me that other people didn't. I rushed to draw them in my sketchbook before they disappeared. I used to dream of becoming a famous artist. I longed to fly away to other countries where artists were doing exciting new things. So when I grew up, I decided to leave Japan. My mother didn't want me to go, but I was determined to make my dream come true. I got on a plane and flew to America. I arrived with a suitcase full of drawings and had some money hidden in my shoes, but the money soon ran out. With nothing left to buy food, I went to the market to pick up scraps. I would find fish heads and cabbage leaves that had been thrown away, which I used to make soup. At least it was something. I lived in my very own apartment where I painted day and night. I painted hundreds and hundreds of dots onto large canvases. The dots often came off the pictures and ended up on my dress, table, and walls. I wasn't sorry. Each dot was part of thousands of others. They made me feel like I was a single dot that was part of our infinite universe. I was making lots of paintings, but I was poor and alone. One day, an elegant lady came knocking on my door. Her name was Georgia O'Keeffe, and she was a famous American painter. I had written her a letter asking for her advice on how to become a successful artist. She wanted to know how I was and offered to help me sell my artwork. She introduced me to her art dealer, who immediately bought one of my paintings. Wow! I continued to paint a lot of pictures, and soon I was ready to put on my first solo exhibition in New York City. It was a success. I had more and more exhibitions and more ideas for new works. I made soft cushion shapes, which I used to fill rooms, boats, and shoes, and covered couches, armchairs, and hats. I covered bags and dresses with dried pasta and filled rooms with glittery balls and lights. I created mirrored rooms which reflected everything over and over again. I also organized performances that I called happenings, where I covered people's bodies with dots. It was a pretty daring thing to do at the time. My art was starting to get noticed and written about in the newspapers, so I decided to change the world for the better. I organized happenings on the streets of New York to protest against the war in Vietnam. I covered lots of men and women in dots and handed out leaflets with messages of freedom and peace. But it didn't last long because the police came and arrested me. As soon as I was released, I started working even harder than before. I held other happenings. I made films. I published a newspaper, and I created unusual party dresses. Some had big holes cut out of them, and others were made for two people to wear together. I even made a huge dress that could be worn by as many as 25 people at the same time. I loved creating all this new experimental art, but there came a time when I had to stop because I became unwell. I left New York and went back to Japan to get better. Back at home, I saw the beautiful mountains and the cherry trees in blossom, but a lot of things had changed since I left. The meadows and streams that used to inspire me to draw had been built over, and the cities were filled with smog. That made me sad. Then one day it snowed. The snow covered everything and transformed the landscape, turning it into something pure and beautiful, just how I remembered it when I was a girl. I found a studio near the hospital I was staying in and started working. Creating art made me feel better. I also began writing. I would paint during the day and write at night. Although I miss New York, I decided to stay in Japan. It's where I still live today, and I still work nonstop, making paintings, writing books, and designing clothes and other objects. And the other thing I love to make is pumpkins. I've always loved pumpkins with their beautiful shape and sweetness. And I want to show all the love I feel for them through my art. I also like to cover them in, you guessed it, dots. You won't believe it, but I picked up a pumpkin when I was a child and it talked to me. My artworks have become really famous, and now you can see them in many different art galleries and museums around the world. My dream has come true. More about Yayoi Kusama. Yayoi Kusama is one of the world's most celebrated living artists. She was born in Matsumoto, Japan in 1929. From an early age, Kusama loved drawing. She drew what she saw around her and what she imagined, which was often repeating patterns of dots. Although Kusama studied traditional Japanese painting, she wanted to express herself through art like no one else before. In 1958, she moved to New York and started creating huge paintings filled with tiny, intricate dots. She called them infinity nets. Kusama went on to create her incredible infinity rooms, where her works were reflected endlessly by the room's mirrored walls, ceilings, and floors. She also organized a series of performance art events known as happenings, where she painted people's bodies with bright polka dots. She used these happenings to protest against political events such as the Vietnam War. Kusama's art was unusual, daring, and exciting, challenging people's understanding of the world and of themselves. In 1973, Yayoi moved back to Japan, where she still lives and works. She is now recognized as one of the most popular contemporary artists today, and her art continues to be exhibited and to inspire people all over the world. This art installation by Yayoi Kusama is called All the Eternal Love I Have for the Pumpkins. It is made with acrylic pumpkins, LED lighting, black glass, mirrors, wood, and metal. The room was first created in 2016 and was 13.5 by 13.5 feet wide and 9.5 feet high. The end.